Looks to kick off the... Oh, breaks him down. Oh,
Paddy Pimblett with the big squeeze.
Rene could joke early already. He's got this locked. He has got this locked. Back is going to go out here.
It might not look like it, but this exact moment is the worst of Paddy Pimblett's entire career. It was the culmination of a several years long journey with everything on the line, and well, this is where it all fell apart. This was his ticket to stardom, a worldwide platform like the UFC, and it all appeared to be fading away. Fast forward to the current day, he's in the UFC, has experienced some of that stardom, and going into Paddy's next fight in Manchester at UFC 304, one of the biggest opportunities for him to fight in his home country, his first pay-per-view on home soil, I decided to run a poll on our social accounts, and with 20,000 votes cast, a mere 6% of people said they were compelled to watch him fight this weekend. That is a massive turnaround from a couple of years ago when we were there live in the O2 Arena in London, and he was far and away the biggest star of the show, even with Aspinall headlining there, and this happened again that July. Paddy was the biggest star. And again, that was just 2 years to the day of this upload. Looking back at the Jared Gordon fight, where most people see that as a robbery, myself included, some interviews gone awry.
You're not a journalist no more.
Far from it.
You're a content creator, Ariel. You're not a journalist.
Woo! I just sat back and let that go. I didn't want to interrupt. He's a massive sack of is what he is.
And yeah, that's how we get to that 6%. Even rando YouTube creators like Sunny V2 are covering him, and it's not been positive. So surely this is the worst part of Paddy's career, right? How could it possibly be the moment I mentioned a minute ago when he was winning the fight? Well, I'll tell you all about it. I'm Jason from MMA On Point. A huge shout out to our Hall of Famers for supporting this channel. And this is the moment Paddy Pimblett's career fell apart.
What's up, fight fans? UFC 304 is upon us. We've got two massive title fights coming up. Tom Aspinall defending the interim title against Curtis Blades. Leon Edwards defending his title against Bilal Muhammad. Two rematches. It's going to be banging. But do you know what's more banging? Our sponsor, DraftKings. But being partnered with DraftKings, guys, we have got you covered, okay? All new customers who bet just $5 on anything will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. And you can stay in on the action, use your $150 in bonus bets on a DraftKings same game parlay. And then you'll be in with a chance for an even bigger payout. You can combine multiple bets together from the same fight, including number of rounds or method of victory. And the more bets you combine, the more you can win. If sports betting's not yet available in your state, don't worry, you can still get in on the action with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. And still be in with a shot to win some cash prizes. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers use the promo code ONPOINT, bet just $5 and get your $150 in bonus bets instantly. So that's promo code ONPOINT only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
A lot of people may not realize this because Paddy has emerged as a UFC level competitor only since 2021.
Luigi went to Bobo's, lad, know what I mean? He needed a pillow when he hit the deck there.
But the dude has already been fighting as a pro for 12 years. And many will recall that he hit it big on the UK circuit about 10 years ago. Even back then, when I was living in the States in Tennessee, it was impossible to ignore. By 2015, he'd already won his first 145-pound title with FCC. Yes, he actually did used to fight at 145 back in those days.
And there's the submission. Paddy Pimblett wins the European featherweight title and full contact contender.
And by the next year, he was in Cage Warriors winning their featherweight title too. But it was more than just a couple titles in the UK's two biggest promotions. He was also getting major headlines. Why? Well, because this dude would just make an entire arena lose their minds.
You get the sense that you're witnessing something special. We had it in Dublin with Conor McGregor. We might just have it tonight in Liverpool. Pimblett celebrating with his people in his city.
But if you're a mixed martial arts fan from across the pond, by now you have surely heard of Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. I have been terrorized by fans of his on Twitter to tell me, you better get Paddy the Baddy on the show. Last time this happened to this degree about a fighter who wasn't in the UFC was Conor McGregor 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. I swear it was reminiscent.
And that might feel like a bit of hyperbole. Everyone makes this comparison way too often now, but this felt genuine back then. It was hard to deny the crowd support, and at that point, that's just where the hype was. His walkouts were getting a ton of attention, his post-fight interviews blowing up. It just looked like this guy was headed straight to the moon, and it was only a matter of time. The fights were incredible and wild, and he had that quote-unquote it factor. He was just waiting for a phone call from the UFC at that point. And that was when, surprisingly, he re-signed with Cage Warriors in a contract that would extend through 2017. And on top of that, he was booked against Julian Erosa to defend his title. You might recognize that name for a few reasons, including the fact that he is currently in the UFC now and has had several stints there. But back then, he was coming off a semi-finalist run on The Ultimate Fighter. You know, the season Conor McGregor coached against Uriah Faber, but he ended up getting finished by Artem Lobov. Not the greatest run, but certainly not a poor performance making that far into the show at least, and as an opponent, he was a familiar name to put Paddy against. So it was a surefire good look for Paddy to take him out on his meteoric ascent, right? So if you go back and look, Paddy started off strong in this fight. Erosa was maybe getting a bit better of him on the feet in round one, but Paddy dominated on the ground and looked to be implementing his game really well. That is until the second when Paddy got dropped.
Together to really... he drops Paddy Pimblett there in a wild exchange. Very dangerous there.
Yeah, this happens in a lot of his fights. He does get rocked often, but it showed a more pronounced moment on the feet for Erosa, stealing that round. And in the third round, it looked like Paddy was taking over again with more ground control, but fast forward to the end of the round and Paddy got rocked again.
Deep breath from Paddy.
And he dives for a takedown.
It also didn't help that he was looking absolutely gassed by the end of it. Going into the fourth, Erosa's coach was literally yelling out how tired Paddy was.
He's crumbling on you, dude. And you hear the corner of Erosa say he's crumbling on you.
It was easily Erosa's best round. The commentary even said as much going into the final frame.
I mean, Erosa's definitely winning this fight for me, and Paddy should be the one steaming forward trying to take this victory.
This one, I suppose you could score either way, but even Paddy thought he lost that round. This was a pretty clear decision for Erosa, at least you'd think. And that's when the judges' scorecards were read.
In favor 49-46, 48-47, and 48-47 for the winner. And still, Paddy the Paddy.
49-46 on one of the judges' scorecards for Paddy? Wow, I'm not gonna lie, guys. This is one I watched when it aired live, and I thought it was a robbery back then, and watching it again, it feels like an even bigger one. Way more so than the Jared Gordon fight, and I'm not even the kind of guy to throw around the word robbery loosely. I rarely say this about fights, but it was about as bad as one gets. I only scored one round for Paddy myself, and to make matters worse, during the post-fight speech, he was ironically talking about weight issues.
The weight cuts killed me.
And let's say he blew some chunks. I'd show it, but YouTube wouldn't even recommend this video to you if I did that. The point is, Erosa should have won that fight, and with that, the cracks around this supposed new megastar began to form. But at least in this case, considering it was taken on short notice, he had some injuries, and those chunks he spewed were literally made of blood, a diehard supporter of his could have just as well argued he was super sick, and that's why he had a rough performance. That, and of course, he didn't officially lose, so they had that in their back pocket. Paddy was his usual self afterwards as well.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, that was me at like 50-60%. You know what I mean? That was Erosa at 100%. If we had a rematch, it wouldn't be a fight. It'd be a massacre.
I mean, the dude was only 21. Setbacks are normal, especially that early into a career, so that paired with it officially being ruled a win, his momentum basically just hit a road bump and kept going.
Everyone in the gym loves me, lad. Everyone in Liverpool loves me. That's all I need.
So this time, it appeared he'd learned his lesson about taking a short notice fight and waited it out for Cage Warriors to go back to Liverpool in April of that next year in 2017. And his opponent on paper was a lot easier. Only on a 2-fight win streak, and had never had any notable accolades like Erosa, despite commanding a respectable 10-2, was Nad Narimani. Again, it appeared to be a safer fight, but still a good test. And not to mention it was happening in front of one of the biggest audiences Cage Warriors has ever been able to get.
6,000 tickets sold, not a single seat being used here at the Echo.
And what happened in this fight was, well, just kind of nothing for Paddy. The first round consisted of him defensively grappling off his back. The second was Narimani controlling the action on the feet with a couple good shots, and Paddy just not able to get much going in the few times he did try to get it to the ground throughout the fight, and many times just getting reversed. This was pretty much the story of the whole fight. Perhaps it was just the pressure of everything and everyone watching, but his game just never really got going in that fight.
But man, oh man, did it feel like a big deal. And this really the second straight fight in which Paddy Pimblett does not look good. Won the last one just a couple of months ago, but it was a very controversial decision, and then comes back with this performance, loses, no question about that decision. I mean, it was very clear, there was no controversy at all. A tough night for him, and yeah, maybe we do have to press the brakes. He is 22, so let's not write him off just yet.
There was talk of food poisoning, but Paddy seemed unfazed after the fight and was pretty resolute that it was just a bad night.
Just chilling, lad. Being a normal 22-year-old kid for once. Enjoying myself, lad. Getting fat. I am the main man. Someone dispute this.
And this is where his career took a shift. He ended up taking a ton of time off despite rumors of a Julian Erosa rematch, but he also moved up to lightweight to address some criticisms about his weight cut. Of course, those criticisms continue to this day despite the move up. And to christen that debut, he had a pretty resounding rebound win. So with his star power as big as what he had earned and the ever-alluring prospect of heading back to Liverpool for Cage Warriors, Paddy was a shoo-in to compete for the 155-pound title in this new weight class, this time against a guy named Soren Bach, a by all means bona fide talent that had risen up the Cage Warriors ranks with 11 wins and just 1 loss. And he was somebody who could potentially match Paddy's game on the ground.
Like grappling backgrounds, I'm more jiu-jitsu, he's more wrestling. It is going to end up on the floor at some point, definitely.
And that's my ultimate goal, to become a UFC champion. This is a stepping stone for me.
But more importantly, Paddy, in a short moment of brutal clarity, let out how much pressure he was feeling going into this one and how bad that last loss truly was.
That was one of the worst nights of my life. The only things I can compare to that is me nan dying and my grandma dying, you know what I mean? I can't lose in here, you know what I mean? I can't lose in here. Whether it's for the belt, whether it weren't for the belt, whether it was fighting on the undercard, I can't lose in here again.
And unlike the past few fights, Paddy came out really strong, almost immediately taking the back of Soren and locking in a rear naked choke.
It's the kick off breaks it down. Oh, he's got Pimblett with the big squeeze. Rear naked choke early already. He has got this locked. Back is going to go out here.
And so, yeah, this is the moment I talked about earlier being Paddy's worst moment. How? Well, somehow Soren did not tap or go to sleep. Instead, he somehow survived, and not just that, but survived a bunch of crazy ground strikes on the back and managed to make it to the final bell. And I don't want to say Paddy didn't have success throughout the rest of this fight, because it's not like he didn't have a few bright moments, but Soren Bach just managed to get the better of him on the feet, and by the third, Paddy was being controlled as well. Those first 5 minutes proved to be fleeting as Soren slowly took over the fight from the second onwards. And although not a finish, this was about as close as you could possibly get to one.
Absolutely.
Seconds of the round.
Soren Bach going to town in this position. Hammer fist, and what an emphatic finish.
Soren Bach seconds away from a TKO victory there, perhaps.
And this was the moment it all looked to be over. This is the reason I say it's the worst moment of his career, because it wasn't just his career aspirations. It was maybe his entire career that was falling apart. When the dream was dead, essentially winning 1 out of his last 4 fights depending on how you see the Erosa fight, or at the very best 2-2. No momentum, no title, and at this stage definitely no UFC contract. I remember watching this at the time and just being like, yeah, this is never gonna happen. And this was in 2018. 2 years almost to the day that he took Liverpool by storm and won the featherweight title. It already looked to be over.
Paddy loses, and a lot of people saying like that's it. Like Paddy is who we thought he was. Like he is not UFC caliber. He's not upper echelon. He's a one-trick pony. He can't strike. Do you feel like this is fair?
Unfair. I think he's no better or worse than some of the fighters we've seen on UFC events.
And we wouldn't see him again for about another year and a half. He had some nagging injuries that he took care of. Another of his opponents missed weight. But many began to question if we'd ever see him back. Finally, though, we got a date. March 20th, 2020 would be his return. And that's when it all began.
The time has now come for us all to do more. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
It should be noted that this was the weekend that the UFC infamously canceled their big fight night with Edwards versus Woodley, and that meant meanwhile at Cage Warriors they were having the same issue that week, and so two of Paddy's opponents dropped out as well. But Paddy stuck through, and in front of basically no one at all in Manchester.
Seems so bizarre to hear this music and not have a crowd of 6,000 Scousers screaming their heads off.
He triumphantly made his return that night despite everything.
Firing off shots, Paddy's looking for the finish.
See that hips pushed into the ground. You see how he's sprawled out. He's almost hyperextended backwards. And there we go.
Paddy, the Paddy is back.
Now here we are about 4 years or so later in Manchester with a similar situation against Paddy. While he hasn't officially lost since Soren back in the last 6 years, way back in 2018, many people have lost faith in the guy. And I tend to agree with a lot of the points made about him. I do think Jared Gordon deserved that win, and I do think many of the interviews he gave leading up to that fight and after didn't really paint himself in the best light.
Everyone's got an opinion, lad. The opinions are arseholes, you know what I mean? Everyone's got one. I know I won that fight, simple as. I don't care what anyone says, lad. When you look back in the history books, I've got the little green marker next to my name with a W, so everyone else can suck me arsehole.
I thought it was a close decision. I thought Jared won.
And it certainly didn't help taking on an aging Tony Ferguson.
This fight's a lose-lose for me. You know what I mean? Tony Ferguson, I don't care what anyone says. It's a lose-lose. He's on a 6-fight losing streak.
So although this situation he's gotten himself into is far, far different than the rough 2 years he had in Cage Warriors, the solution itself is the same. Win. But the pressure is on to win in impressive fashion. Another Cage Warriors vet, Ian Gary, has a similar issue with a lack of popularity, and he didn't exactly enjoy a lot of newfound popularity with his decision over MVP. What Paddy does here needs to be impressive to win some of those fans back. And yeah, I have a feeling despite all the controversy, the crowd is going to be there for him in a big, big way in Manchester, obviously. But that still isn't reflected at the moment worldwide. Can he deliver, or does Bobby Green take out another prospect like he did against Grant Dawson last year? Either way, something tells me this fight will make or break him. This guy is literally just 29, but that is the point, as Tommy pointed out in his video about primes for fighters. 29 is the come-up age. It's also the make or break age for talents on the come up. And Bobby is a perfect opponent with a top 15 spot next to his name. And so yeah, I guess that's the point of this video, is to show you guys that there actually was a lower point in his career. And we've seen a ton of fighters bounce back over the years, like the Michael Bispings, even Tito Ortiz when he fought Bader. I'm pretty impartial, you know, he's a good dude, but I think it's important to note that fighters go through ups and downs. And whether or not he wins this weekend or he falls into obscurity, there was a point where he literally didn't even look like he'd even be here. But anyhow, a huge shout out to our Hall of Famers. You guys are awesome. Super appreciate you all for supporting this channel. You guys are all awesome. And for everybody else, make sure to like and hit that subscribe button. I'll see you on the next video. Peace.